Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the last 6 months because I've just finished my 6-month rotation of general paediatrics and I'm about to be starting next week another 6-month rotation of neonates. I cannot believe that I'm already 6 months into my training. It's an 8-year training program and you do different rotations along the way. Most of them are 6 months long and I just can't believe I finished a whole 6-month rotation already. Like, the time has flown. But I wanted to reflect on the last 6 months with you guys because I have grown so much as a doctor, as a paediatric trainee, as a grown-up adult, and I've developed so many skills and just become so much more confident than I was 6 months ago. And I just think now would be a really nice time to reflect on it, especially as I'm still at the very beginning of my training and the beginning of my journey, and I want to be bringing you guys along with me. What's really weird is that literally this time last year I had my paediatric interview and now I'm making a video about my first 6 months as a paediatric trainee. Like, it's just so amazing to think how much changes and how much you grow and develop in just a short amount of time, like a year or 6 months. I really clearly remember stepping onto the paediatric ward for the first time in September 2020 and being on ward round and writing my name in the notes with paediatric ST1 afterwards, and I was just so excited by that small tiny thing, but it meant so much to me that I was on the beginning of this journey. So yeah, I just want to share with you some of my reflections of the last 6 months. So one of the biggest things that have developed for me is my practical skills. I am so much better at doing blood tests and cannulas and even lumbar punctures. I've been successful in a few than I was 6 months ago. I was petrified 6 months ago, and I had a rule in my head that I would basically try and take every single opportunity to practice and learn, but I would basically expect myself to fail every time I went to see a patient and do a procedure. I actually remember so clearly my first cannula that I did on a child when I was in peds, a child who was actually really difficult to bleed, and the child was screaming and telling me that he hated us, and the mum was crying because the child was screaming so much, and I ended up doing 2 attempts and failing. Like, I left the room sweating so much, and I was in full PPE as well because I had to wear PPE. That was very traumatic. But since then, I've really tried to take every single opportunity to practice, and it's really nice to see how much more confident I am at those skills and how now I feel like I'm more likely to succeed than fail, which is a really nice feeling. I've just spent the last 6 months really practicing these skills and really trying to be as good as I can as possible. Every time I didn't feel confident or thought it would be tricky, I would take a senior with me or ask them for some hints and tips, or someone more experienced, like some of the advanced nurse practitioners or even some of the nurses are so much more experienced at doing bloods than I am, and I would just use their skills and their knowledge to help me and to make me better at doing them myself. And it's really helped. Last week on my set of nights, I had 2 tricky blood tests, which I managed to get first time. Actually, they were cannulas, not blood tests. I managed to get them in first time. One was on a really tiny baby, I think 2 or 3 weeks old, and the mum had said that the baby had already had a couple of cannulas, and each of those needed 2 attempts each. And she was really surprised that I got it in first time, and I was a bit surprised as well with myself because it was such a small baby and I'm not very confident with the small ones. And then I had another child who was a toddler, and she was really scared of needles, and we ended up needing 4 people to kind of hold her down and calm her down whilst I did the cannula, and I got it in first time and it wasn't a mess, whereas sometimes I get them in and it's very messy and there's blood everywhere and I need to tidy it up. But I got it in first time, nice and clean, and I just, both of those were in one night shift, and I just felt so proud of myself, and I was like, look how far you've come, Rads, to the Rads at the beginning of ST1 in September and October and November, who was almost always going to fail a cannula or a blood test, to now where I'm much more confident, I'm much more likely to succeed, and it just shows how much practice makes perfect. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but the practice has really helped. And if you ever find yourselves in these sorts of situations, I'd really encourage you to just keep practicing, keep using every single opportunity you can, and trying to get better and better and learn skills and techniques of how to make yourself better at the thing you're not so good at. Now I'm going to have another challenge when I'm on neonates, where these are really tiny babies and I'll be having to do cannulas in maybe babies that are like 2 or 3 hours old or a couple of days old, which will be a whole nother challenge in itself. But hopefully this time in 6 months, I'll be looking back at this video and thinking, look, Rads, you can do that now as well. So it's all about the growth and it's all about the learning and developing of the skills. But I think that's a really great thing about medicine, is that you do keep learning and developing these skills. And I'm just really pleased to think about how much I've developed and grown in the last 6 months. I think another thing that's really developed for me is my confidence in my clinical abilities, before, at the beginning, I would need my senior to come with me to every single patient that I saw and to re-review them and to make sure that everything I'd done was okay and satisfactory and they were happy with my plan. But now I reckon about 25% of the time I'm happy to basically discharge the patient myself as long as I discuss it with the senior, rather than wanting my senior to see the patient themselves. And I know that's only a really tiny step in the right direction of discussing rather than asking them to be reviewed, but for me I just feel so much more confident and so much more sure of what I'm doing because I've been seeing so many children over the last 6 months, and my seniors have been training me and teaching me and reminding me what sorts of things to look out for and why a child would need to be admitted. So it's really nice to see how much more confident I am in my clinical abilities and assessing an unwell child or a well child and being sure I'm doing the right thing. Teaching medical students is something I used to be petrified of doing. I used to be really worried that they would know more than me, that they would ask questions that I wouldn't know the answer to, or just that they would just think I'm a bit of a silly doctor or didn't really know what I was doing. But I'm so much more comfortable and confident doing that now, and it's something I really, really actively enjoy. I like teaching medical students on the ward, doing practical things like ward round entries or how to examine a child, or discussing cases and doing case-based discussions or mini kexes. All of the sorts of things that I was really grateful for as a medical student when doctors did for me, I'm now trying to give back and do that to the medical students too. I'm actually in a WhatsApp group with the current medical students on their rotation, and if I ever find that I'm not too busy or the ward's not too busy, I message them and do a little ad hoc teaching session with them, and it's just really, really nice. I'm really glad I'm doing that, and it makes me feel more confident. Teaching always makes the teacher more confident and more competent as well. So I'm really grateful that I'm now able to teach medical students, and I'm hoping to keep doing that throughout my career. My communication skills have gotten so much better. I have always been okay taking histories from patients, but I used to think, especially in paediatrics, that my histories seem to be a little bit like an interrogation, which can happen, particularly when you're more junior. But I feel like I've just become a lot better at making a bit more of a conversation with the parents and really just treating them as an actual human being rather than a patient, and just talking through it nice and clearly and nice and slowly and really getting a good understanding of the child. I feel like I'm much better at building rapport with the parents and also building rapport with the child as well. I make sure I involve them, play games with them when I'm examining them, ask them questions like, how are you finding lockdown, or how are you finding Zoom, or what did you have for dinner? Just little things like that. They find it a lot more enjoyable, and then they're more likely to open up to you as well and tell you about things that have been bothering them or any other symptoms that they've had. And I have actually noticed that a few times where a child has been to a GP and then been referred in, and because I've managed to build that rapport with them, the child's then told me a symptom that their parents like, oh, they've never mentioned that before. And I think that's only come out because I've spent time playing with them and building that rapport, even though sometimes I worry that parents think it's a waste of time. But it's really important to make sure that the child feels comfortable in a hospital setting and talking to doctors. So I'm consciously making an effort to do that with children. And I feel like I'm so much more comfortable communicating in these scenarios where you're the doctor and you have a patient and you also have their parent, and you kind of need to balance all of that. So communication skills is definitely something I've improved, but there's always room for improvement when it comes to communication skills, and it's definitely something I want to work on more over the next few years. But I can see a huge difference in my confidence and communication skills from 6 months ago to now. Another thing I've really tried to do this year is take on extra responsibilities. I realised I quite like leadership and managerial kind of roles, and it's great because in medicine you can do that alongside being a doctor and being a clinician. So I'm trying to do little bits and bobs. So this year I've been a trust rep, and I'm a trust rep with a couple of other doctors, and every couple of months we meet with all of the juniors and just check how everyone's doing, see if there's any issues or concerns, and then we relay these to the seniors. And then we also go to meetings at the London School of Paediatrics, although it's all online at the moment, and just hear about what they're doing to help us and potentially relay any concerns that we have at the moment as well. So that's been really nice, and it's also something I'm hoping to do in the future as well. Another thing I did, which was minor, but I also really enjoyed it and it was appreciated by the team, was when we needed to redeploy junior doctors to the COVID rota to ITU, I volunteered to help organise that, and I basically just looked at the rota each week and looked at who we could send to ITU that day. And it's a really small thing, but I quite enjoyed it because I quite like doing things like that, and my consultant was grateful that I was able to help her. And it's another responsibility that I took on. I can put it in my portfolio and say I did this extra thing, and it's something that was appreciated by the team. I know these things are quite small, but it's just quite nice to do these extra things on the side as well as your clinical responsibilities, because it helps mix things up a bit, it helps keep you a bit more involved, and it's also just something quite fun and builds up your own skills in doing these sorts of things as well. I think just generally these 6 months have been really enjoyable. I've learned so much, and I'm so grateful to all of my seniors who've taught me so much. They've really taken the time to sit down and discuss cases with me, discuss how you'd manage them, come with me and re-examine patients and teach me things. And all of these things just help put me into the right direction of eventually becoming a registrar in a couple of years' time, and then eventually becoming a consultant, which I can't even begin to think about. But it's really nice to see how much I've grown, and really nice to take this opportunity to reflect on the last 6 months. And I'd really encourage you guys, if you're at the end of a placement, to reflect on how much you've grown and developed and what you've learned at the end of the placement, because it's really helpful and helps pinpoint your areas of weakness and your strengths, and also helps plan the next 6 months on what you want to gain from that. So I'm really looking forward to my next 6 months on neonates. Neonates is essentially any newborn child within the first 28 days of life, and also premature babies. So I will literally be looking after teeny tiny babies, and I'm really excited for it. It will be a whole new challenge, and I will learn a whole new set of skills. But yeah, I think that's everything I have to say about my last 6 months on general peds. It's been great, I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video and listening to my reflections. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to like and comment if you have any other points you'd like to add, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!